Good morning, everyone. Welcome
Good
to another
morning.
Real Conversation with Dr. Nita. I am your host, Dr. Nita Polite Wilson, and this morning I have with me the one, the only, Ms. Lori Condinus. I am calling this show Lori Condinus, Hometown Activist Heroin. Lori, welcome to the
Thank you.
show.
Thank you, Dr. Anita. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
Always a pleasure.
you. I am more than excited to have you. And I just want to really quickly set the stage for our listeners. This month, we've been talking about laboring for justice. This is the month of September in which we celebrate Labor Day. And I started my first conversation, keeping it real with Dr. Nita, about my personal thoughts around Labor Day and justice. And then we had two shows with our Insanity Check crew. In the first show, we were talking about whether or not the activities that are happening in Portland are still keeping the focus on George Floyd, or is something else going on? And then in our second show, we talked about how we show up as our inner activists and how we can drive conversations that convert to actions. Me personally, I get frustrated with conversation. Conversation is important. You need to listen to understand so that you know what to do to help solve. But once we've had good conversations, we need to convert those conversations to actions. And that's why I wanted to end this show for the month with Lori Condinus. Lori, again, it is a thrill to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I have a question for you. Our theme this month has been laboring for justice. What does that theme mean to you?
To me, that means sacrificing whatever it takes uh, in order to bring respect, dignity, and justice to workers and the
And
community at large, our beloved community.
mhm. And when you say community, tell me, are you generally speaking, are you thinking about the work that you do as an activist? Define community for me.
Well, community is the people we live around, we live next door to, we go to church with, we work with. That is all a part of our beloved community, and the activism around that is very important, especially now in the time that we're in, which is for us in the activist world, it's like a house on fire for us. So that's how I would define it.
You talk about the times that we're living in right now, and I'm particularly thinking about the murder of George Floyd, which everyone saw on TV, and the protests that emerged around the world, global protests that were really speaking to this injustice, not just for George Floyd. Certainly, Mr. Floyd was the catalyst, but for injustice around the world. I don't know about anybody else, but I thought this was unique to America, and to see this happening all across the world was eye-opening for me. So my question is, do you think that the initial spark for activism has somehow lost its direction with the activities that are now going on in Portland?
No, I don't believe that. I believe that what happened in Portland, to some extent, was instigated by the government. You brought in paramilitary people to deal with protests. Um, you heighten people's anxiety and anger just in the way that they responded. Now, anytime there's a protest or a demonstration, you run the risk of people coming in that don't necessarily have the same agenda you do, or they're there just to cause chaos, and that's unfortunate. It's hard for us to deal with who's who when you're out with so many people. But I can tell you that the response that the government took in Portland was the wrong response, and that to me helped that powder keg to blow. Um, there was no need for that response. Um, we're peaceful protesters. We do push the envelope. We do irritate people to no end, but that's what gets changed. Things will not change if we just go and keep asking, will you please? You have to force it.
Mm-hmm. Now, for us lay people who have been watching things on TV, I'm sure that there are aspects of what went down in Portland that we're not aware of when you say the government response was not appropriate. Can you give us some insight into why you say that the government's response was not appropriate?
Well, you don't need SWAT for protests. You, on top of that, you sent in people who were, you couldn't identify them. They just had on fatigues. They're snatching people off the street. Nobody knows where these people were for a length of time. You have no badge, no nothing. So for all I know, you're trying to kidnap me, different direction. And it was unnecessary. It was totally unnecessary. Yes, there was some violence. And again, it's hard for us to kind of determine who's who when you are in such a big crowd of people. The majority of those people were peaceful protesters. And the response was way overboard for what is typically used for peaceful protests. The police, typically the police will be at a protest. They typically always have a labor division who deal with protests. We usually have a relationship with whoever the captain is of that detail, that there's communication.
Okay.
We're here to peacefully protest. We are not here to tear up anything. That is not our agenda. That is not our goal. Typically, it goes off smooth. But Portland, that went in a very bad direction. You just can't send in unnamed, unmarked, no badge to snatch people off the street. That's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It did not stop the movement, but it certainly made us look at it a little differently when we go out. Like now I gotta worry about somebody jumping out of a van unmarked and snatching me in, family, or no one knows where I'm at. That's unacceptable. And that's not what this country was built on.
Do you think that was an unconscious oversight, or do you think perhaps to some degree it was intentional?
I believe it was absolutely intentional.
Okay.
I believe that the current administration doesn't take kindly to protest, doesn't take kindly to any type of pushback. And I felt they took that action to try to scare and intimidate us and have us stop hitting the streets for justice.
So again, from the perspective of a layperson, I would consider myself a layperson. I think a lot of people who are going out and protesting these days are themselves lay people. And that is how they are answering the call from their inner activists. When I think about my inner activists, what I do is I create space for the voices of everyone else. I firmly believe that every voice matters. And to that degree, I created a Facebook page. It's called 846. And I did it because once I saw what had happened to Mr. Floyd, I was beside myself. I could not stop weeping. And I'm not a crier. That's not to say that I don't get touched. But when I can't stop weeping, something has touched me to the depths of my soul. And my response was to write something. And then I shared it with my niece before I decided to put it on Facebook. I thought about maybe putting some music to it. And she said, Auntie, this is so powerful, but you really need some images to it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, now you're talking to me way past what I'm able to do. And within an hour, bless her heart, she had taken my words and put images to them. And even though I knew what I was going to be saying, it made me cry. And so again, my inner activist responds by making space for other voices, bringing other voices in. And even though I established that Facebook page, and thank you so much for being a part of it, I've actually left it open for other people to bring the voices, because it's not about me. It was about my ability to create a space and answer the call of my inner activist. How do you define activism for yourself, and what does that look like for you? And so maybe now this is the time for you to tell us what you do.
Well, I am a labor activist. I've been in labor for over 30 years. I'm currently with AFSCME District Council 36. Prior, I was with Unite Here Local 11, for most of those years. And I also am a executive member of National Action Network Los Angeles. Work very closely with Reverend Mosley here on the West Coast. And of course, our national president is the Reverend Al Sharpton. So with that, activism, I define it as very simply, you have to be active. Activism, you have to be active in some way, shape, or form. You have to be in the streets. You have to be in council meetings. You have to board of supervisors all the way to the White House. You have to hold these politicians accountable. You have to make sure that you go in with an agenda in hand. You don't just go in and say, you're doing a horrible job. You go in and say, this is what we need. This is what we want you to do for such and such community. And, you know, if they don't, then you hold them accountable and you vote them out the next time. Because for too long, and especially for our people, for African Americans, we haven't went to the table and demanded our agenda. And we have to do that now. I think that if we prevail in November and Vice President Biden and Senator Harris prevail, we will have someone in the White House that we can certainly get access to and, you know, put our agenda forth and bring ourselves farther up the road that we haven't been able to do because we never started with a level playing field, if you will. Activism means being active, and it doesn't mean being in the streets. Everybody can't do that. It doesn't mean, you know, showing up at a politician's home to push the envelope. Activism means whatever you're doing, being active around the issue that's going on at the time. Includes attorney work. It includes people frying chicken. It includes people bringing water. Whatever you can add to the movement, you're an activist. You're an activist. We have people that come to these marches and all they do is bring ice water, snacks, gloves, hand sanitizer. That's their way to promote their activism. We're looking out for you that are in the streets. So activism, just be active. You got to be active. You got to act. It's a verb. It's a action word. So if you're active, you're an activist.
It is extremely affirming to hear you say that, because again, as a layperson, I am not in the street. I'm not going to meetings. I don't have an agenda. I'm not in Washington. But you so graciously told me when we were chatting one day, just casually, and I was telling you about my Facebook page, 846, and it's called 846 in honor of Mr. Floyd and the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that he was trying to breathe. And on the very front of my page, it says, everyone can breathe and every voice matters. And you and I were talking, I said, you know, I so admire the work of activists and the fact that you have taken this on as a profession because it's coming from your personal passion. And you were very kind to tell me, sis, you are an activist, even with a Facebook page. So tell me why you think so.
Because this is a platform for our voices to be put out there. And that's one of the biggest parts of activism. You need avenues where voices can be heard and understood. You know, you don't look at us as rebel rousers, troublemakers. You look at us as people out here trying to get it done. So our platform and what you do is extremely important in the movement. Extremely, because everybody doesn't get a chance to get to media. You know, media comes now and then. Platform keeps our voices out there. And that's critically important. You are an activist, whether you like it or not. It's important for this struggle. Very important.
I appreciate that so much. I think we diminish the little things and we fail to remember that to make change, it doesn't have to be something huge. I mean, Post-it notes, they were an accident, but they have revolutionized offices and the way we work. And
Yes,
so that being said, I think that part of the frustration, I don't just think it, I know it. Part of the frustration is people not feeling heard. And I don't just mean heard. I mean, do you understand? I think it was one of the what was that movie with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan? What are those movies?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we said, do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Yes, it's important that people feel not just heard, but are you hearing me? And part of the frustration with people just doing what it takes to get somebody's attention is the fact that we're not feeling heard. And that's crucial in any relationship. And as one who facilitates diversity and inclusion courses, I don't start with the term race relations. I start with relationships, because until we learn to know one another as people, all this other stuff is going to stay in the way. So with that being said, you as a person and the fact that activism is an extremely selfless role, how concerned is your family about your safety?
They're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, they are concerned. My sister, if she knows I'm out in them streets, she's gonna call that evening. Where you at? Good. Text me. I have a friend. You remember Cherie Hill?
I do.
Cherie Hill hits me, and she's in Texas.
Wow.
Cherie Hill hits me up every time she sees I'm in the streets to make sure I made it home okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you know, I come from a very prayerful family. My father is a deacon and has been my whole life, and I know that their prayers are heard, and I know that God has protected me thus far. Will continue to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But they worry. They do worry.
I know you and I was checking in with you one day and we were on the phone. You said, girl, I got to get to this thing going on down here in Santa Ana. I said, let me know that you got home safely.
Right.
So my next question is, how often, if ever, do sometimes your friends and family, and maybe by now because you've been doing this for so long, we know that this is part of who you are. So let me rephrase the question. In the past, when you were first getting started, did friends and family ever mischaracterize your work as just looking for a fight, a good fight, making good trouble?
My dad thought I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
My dad thought I had lost my mind.
Yeah.
When I took my first arrest for civil disobedience, I think he lost his mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to remind him that the conversations that he had with my mother when I was a child about, he was in the Air Force. He was in the United States Air Force for 25, 26 years. My father's whole reason for joining the Air Force was because he wanted to fly a plane. My dad, that's his passion. That's what he wanted to do. And I never forget him coming home saying, because he was Black, you know, he couldn't get the promotion, he couldn't get the rank that was needed to be a pilot. And I remember those conversations. He retires from the post office, retires from the Air Force, goes to the post office for 20 more years. Same thing. He wanted to move up. Same thing. He was Black. They held him from the position that he wanted. And I told him that has a lot to do with why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I heard those conversations and I always thought, well, that's not right. You know, what's the problem? But again, it takes determination and it takes not having fear. You can't go out with fear. If you do, that sometimes is when you get yourself in the wrong situation. So I go out, I pray every time before I hit the streets. Every time I'll sit in my car, Lord, just put your hedge of protection around me. I believe I'm doing your work.
Mm-hmm.
So have your way.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I hit the streets. So that's kind of where I go with that.
And I believe that. I believe that. Now, I'm going to put it out there. Growing up, and I know you remember this, we met in junior high school. And for whatever reason, we got into it once. And I think we got the best of each other. I think it was a draw on that fight.
Right.
But I'll never forget after that, for some reason, I noticed that it was as if you looked out for me. And I couldn't understand why that was. It was you and a couple of other girls that just felt the need to look out for me. Trust me, I could scrap pretty good. I used to fight with the boys. You might not have seen it, but I could scrap. So I'm interested to know, where does the notion of fight the good fight and make good trouble come from in your life?
Well, of course, the late, great John Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I met John Lewis. I had an opportunity to talk to John Lewis. And I'll never forget what he told me. He told me, for one, keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's critically important. He told me, go get in that good trouble and don't let anybody tell you what you're doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me, even if you have to sacrifice your life, it'll be worth it if it changes one racist policy. And I really took that to heart. Like, that's what Dr. King did.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm did, and Medgar Evers, and all these people that they sacrificed their life so that I can be in the position I'm in today. I stand on their shoulders. So, I feel that our ancestors did so much. Dr. King did a whole lot, but we still have to move forward. The struggle does not stop. They just find ways to try to get around us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to stay on it. The struggle never stops. John Lewis was a hero of mine.
Yes.
He was a hero. I was totally devastated the night he passed.
Mm-hmm.
But I live on his shoulders, and I try to take his words very seriously and live my life in that manner.
My last show with my Insanity Check crew, we were talking about the generals of the movement and the passing of this great general in Mr. Lewis. And personally being mentored by him, you must see yourself as a lieutenant. Tell us what that relationship was like. Give us one of your favorite memories of being mentored by this great general, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, indeed. One, it was just, he was so open.
Mm-hmm.
He just chit-chatting like you and I would chit-chat, but he's very deliberate. He was very serious about the movement. He was very realistic about what we had to do in order to keep it going. I valued his words to this day. When he passed, it just made me feel like, okay, now we got to hit it even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Because our forefathers are leaving us. There's only a few left from the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to pick up that torch and keep going, and then be ready and help to train others that are going to come behind us, because the struggle will never end.
Mm-hmm.
Never end.
Why do you suppose that is? And what is it going to take to continue to advance the standing of Black people towards realizing equality? Are we going to see it in our lifetime?
I pray so, but I'm not sure. It's it just, no matter how far we think we've gotten, they're in the background trying to take us back.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in that fight right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you had heard, but last night, young man shot in Wisconsin 6 times. So it's like, okay, here we go. It just doesn't stop. You see all the anger in the streets. You hear worldwide what people are thinking about the police brutality in this country, but it still happens. And it's sometimes it makes you feel, I mean, you get discouraged, you get mad, like we're not doing any good out here, but we are. And we just have to, have a little pity party, and then we got to get right back out there. Because
this is called real conversation. So I'm just going to be real and tell you, I can't keep up with the killings. I can't do it because even right now,
it's tough.
It's tough. And again, because you do this, because you put your whole self into this, I have such a great deal of respect for you. I don't know how you do this because I couldn't do it. So what do you tell a lay person like me who wants to support a heroine like you, but I can't even bring myself to keep up with the names? It hurts too much. How do you do this?
God. God knew when he made me what he made me for. And this is certainly my calling, no doubt about it. Our friend Holly.
I was going to get to her. Bless her heart.
Holly was like, "Oh, you went in the right direction." So it's my passion. It's what I believe in. Mm-hmm. I want to change the world. Mm-hmm. I tell people that all the time. Like, I want to change the world. That's my goal, to change the world. And I won't stop. I won't stop. It's a passion. It's a belief. It's a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle for you. You've made that very, very clear. And I'm so glad that we reconnected a couple of years ago. It's going on 3 years now. I was down at the Anaheim City Hall. I was getting my business license, and I ran into you. And of course, you were in the middle of a protest.
Yes, ma'am.
So good to see you. We chopped it up for a little bit. And I said, you know what? Where are you now? You said, I'm in here in Santa Ana. I said, okay, we're too close. We have no excuse not to get together. We have yet to run into each other again, but we're going to make sure that we make it a point to get together.
But
before I let you go, I do want to give a shout out. And you referred to Holly. Referring to Senator Holly Mitchell, who put forth the Crown Act. Tell us about that and what the two of you get an opportunity to work on together.
We haven't really worked on things together. Mm-hmm. However, she has always been a proponent of labor. Mm-hmm. She has always, when I have called, she has always answered my call. Mm-hmm. She put forth a bill that made us free, in a way. Now you can't tell me how my hair needs to be. My hair will be how I want it to be. Mm-hmm. And that's freedom.
It is.
That's freedom. That's telling people you're beautiful however you want to wear your hair. Corporate America in California can't tell us that now. Mm-hmm. So I honor, I admire Holly. Whenever she asks for help, I try to give it to her. Mm-hmm. She has been an inspiration for me. Mm-hmm. If she can do it, I can do it.
There you go. And Holly, even back in high school, was always doing something. She was always so encouraging to me because I did not really come into my own in high school until I was the corresponding secretary for the Black Student Union. And high school was not, it doesn't necessarily have fond memories for me because I think I'd mentioned when we were little, we grew up on the east side across the bridge, right? Mm-hmm. Where the golf course was. We grew up over there for a little bit. And then like any parent, my parents just wanted to put us in a place where we could have better opportunities. So then we moved across the bridge and lived behind Poly High School. And in junior high, I had to acclimate, and in high school it was tough because I never really felt like I fit in with the white kids that were in my neighborhood, but I never really felt I fit in with the Black kids whose neighborhood I used to be a part of. And so I think maybe that's why you like kind of took me under your wing in junior high school after you tried to beat me up because you felt bad for me.
Stop it.
Oh, my goodness. And I remember people like you or the Thompson twins, they would, when I would try and, prove that I could hang, they'd be like, sweetie, don't try and cuss because that just doesn't work for you. We got you. Don't worry about it.
Bless your heart.
Holly was always so encouraging. And I wish that I'd had the opportunity to keep that relationship going. And so I'm going to reach out to her and ask if she would make some time for a home girl to come and see the show.
I know she will.
I know she will, because that's just who Holly is. What else do you want to share with us? Because this conversation is so rich. Again, I wanted to have this conversation in the month of Labor Day, because I want to look at laboring for justice. What do lay people need to know? You said that as long as we're doing something, even if it's bringing water or lunch for those who are in the street, what else can we do to support you?
We should start looking at different sisters and brothers to run for office. Mm-hmm. We have to be more part of the political process. Mm-hmm. Senator Harris was the only Black woman senator in the Senate. Mm-hmm. That's unacceptable. We have to get in these spaces to make these changes. And running people for office is a way of starting that process. People just need to appreciate workers. Mm-hmm. Look right now, I know so many people probably want to pay teachers triple since the COVID, and their kids are at home and they now have to take on the responsibility. Mm-hmm. Love the workers. Work has dignity.
It does.
King wrote a book. All work has dignity. And we have to start treating workers better, including pay, including benefits, including opportunity, including stock options. We need to be in these positions that will better allow us not only to make change, but to sustain change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because right now, as you see what we're going through in the country, it's going to take quite a bit to undo what's already been done. Mm-hmm. If this administration prevails in November, I don't know where this country's going to go. Mm-hmm. We have to stop being so morally high in terms of the candidates we put forth. Mm-hmm. We put someone up and then they want to tear them down. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't like that person. Well, I'm not voting. Okay, well, you see where that got us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I refuse to allow that to happen this time. We have to get behind our candidates, good, bad, or ugly. There's no perfect candidate. There will never be a perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. We do have to get behind these folks, and we make them accountable. We go with our agenda in hand. This is what we need. This is what we want, and we want you to make this happen. And I think if we could get more African Americans in this political system, we will be better off as a people.
Someone had mentioned to me that I should run for something. And personally, I think that for my taste, what I have seen, again, just a lay person on the outside looking in, it's ugly, it's dirty, they pull no punches. What does it take to survive in that type of arena other than a passion as strong as yours?
Truth and honesty.
That doesn't seem to prevail often. What am I missing?
Well, we have to pick the right people. We have to get behind people that we know have our interest at heart. Not just because they're Black, not just because they're a woman, not just because they worked here or they work there.
Absolutely.
We get behind candidates who have our best interests at heart and will put forth our agenda. Mm-hmm. And until we do that, it's a vicious cycle. Politics is a very dirty sport.
So how can we possibly know? It requires us to follow someone's career, correct?
Do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do your homework on these candidates. Google's wonderful. It tells you everything about,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. Do your homework on the candidate. Read up, see how they voted in the past on different issues that might concern you. And then you make an informed decision. But it takes work. You can't just get the little voter booklet and flip through. You really have to do your research and do your homework in terms of how these politicians have voted, have acted, what have they put in place, what have they taken away. You have to really watch their record to make sure that they will carry out your interests.
And I think that statement is important to reiterate, especially with the upcoming election. Do your homework. Don't just vote party lines necessarily, depending on the topic. You really have to look and see where people really stand. And that's a whole nother issue, which I'm not even going to go into, because it has come to me that, and this is just my opinion, but it seems to me, based on what I know about people and human nature through my work, they tell you that when you go to a business function, the only topics that are safe are sports and the weather. Never discuss politics. And I think it's less about party lines and more about the fact that some people take their politics so seriously and so personally that to attack their politics, or even not even attack, but to have a discussion, to ask someone to think through something that they believe in, is saying, I'm attacking you. And I think in one sense, yes, our politics need to be personal. Does it align with your moral code? But in another sense, it can't be so personal that you're willing to have a fight with somebody just because they ask where you stand and why. And I think they're fair questions. What do you think about that?
I think that the current administration has so polarized the hate, the disdain, the prejudice. I mean, it has all boiled to the top. It's always been there.
It has.
It's been, quiet. Now it's boiled to the top in a very bad way. And they're just people you just can't have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because all you're going to do is get upset or get in a fight, and you just have to just let it go, because it's so polarized right now. And why are people out here arguing over a doggone mask? A mask, simple. To protect you, to protect me, to protect your family, my family. And now that's turned into this huge political storm where people's lives are being lost. And there's no need for that. We shouldn't have almost 180,000 lives that have been lost in this country. More than 9/11, World War II, put together. But we're going to argue and fight over a mask. So during this time, I'm going to be honest, I found it extremely discouraging. Being confronted by the Karens, it wears you out. It wears you out to have to go outside my house in whatever I'm wearing, and that upsets you to the point that you wanted to make a big deal out of it and call the police. Like, where are we in this country right now? Why is the white and black divide so vicious right now? And it comes from the top.
I think that you raise a good point in the fact that it's always been there, but now it's raw. And on the one hand, I think it's a good thing because at least people are talking. But on the other hand, some people that don't want to talk have just been emboldened to behave in ways that just don't help. But that's a conversation for another time, because when I think about it, And next month, we are going to be having discussions about conflict negotiation, especially now that we're gearing up towards the election season. I want to make sure that families stay intact, even though they don't necessarily agree politically. And so for that, we're having a subject matter expert come in and talk with us about conflict negotiation and how to keep your family intact, even though you might be on opposite ends of the political spectrum. But my last question for you is, in light of everything that we've talked about, and you have shared so much with us, thank you so much. What do you see as your next step? It seems to me you might want to go in and fill the shoes of your mentor, Mr. Lewis. What do you think about a political career for yourself?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. My calling is here in the street with the people. As you get higher in politics, the layers between the people become greater.
Right.
I really want to be in the streets with the people. I don't think elected office is my calling. You'll have other people say different, but no, I don't see myself in that arena.
All right.
I know my limitations.
I'll mark the calendar for what is today, August 24th, 2020.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we'll see how things transpire. And when you change your mind, let me know. I'd love to be a part of your political campaign team. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lori Condinus, thank you so much. Our hometown activist heroism. It has been a pleasure. My heroine. I mean, I cannot tell you how much respect I have for your work, for your depth of knowledge, for your sacrifice. The fact that you're my hometown girl, it has been more than an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm honored, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Always. Whatever you need, you know, I got you. I will tell the whole world I have her. So don't go there.
Don't try it, because I remember. Don't even try it.
Don't try.
Well, community, thank you so much for joining me for another Real Conversation with Dr. Anita. Remember that you can check out all of my podcasts, Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita, Insanity Check with Dr. Anita, and of course, Real Conversations with Dr. Anita on my YouTube channel, Dr. Anita PhD. Remember, you have to spell it out, Doctoranita PhD. Please go there, like the channel, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'm always going to keep it real. And until our next Real Conversation, remember to stay blessed and keep it real. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.